I'm delighted to welcome today Joy Warren, who is the coordinator for the Fluoride Free Alliance UK. Welcome, Joy, to the podcast.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for asking.
Most welcome. Now, fluoride is a topic that I thought everybody knew about, but apparently they don't. So what's the big deal on fluoride? Why should we be aware of it?
Yes, well, we buy drinking water from the water company. We expect to get drinking water. What we are getting in fluoridated areas is medicine. We never signed up to buy medicine. And if we want medicine, I feel we should be able to do it ourselves. We don't have to have it compulsorily. There's the ethical problem of fluoridation. And we're paying for medicine. Why should we have to pay for medicine? We want drinking water. So we feel that the water companies have violated the contract between themselves and their consumers. The next big deal is that, of course, it is a medicine, and it's not a medicine that everybody would want, because it's only intended for tiny tots to try and prevent dental decay in their teeth. There are other issues, of course, but those are the two main ones.
So interesting. I've never heard fluoride described as medicine. And is there any evidence it's medicine? Is there any evidence that it does help tiny tots with their teeth? I mean, I'm sure I didn't have fluoride painted on my teeth when I was little. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I don't think so.
You might have had fluoride tablets. Would they be on prescription?
Right.
So, it is a medicine in accordance with the Drinking Water Directive, which has been retained post-Brexit. The definition of a drinking water is drinking water which is provided by a water company. It does not include bottled water and medicinal water, such as spa water from Bath or Baden-Baden, and most certainly doesn't include drinking water to which a medicinal substance has been added, thus turning it into medicine. So we're not protected by the Drinking Water Directive. Then we look at the Medicines Act for UK, and there's a definition in there of what a medicine is. And it's very broad, anything which has a physiological effect on the body. So in two counts, as far as we're concerned, it is medicine. And to deny it's a medicine is just legal fiction on the part of the Medicines Healthcare Regulatory Products Agency and the government. So because they're denying that it's medicine, we have been told that we don't have the right to refuse it.
Interesting. When you started talking about medicine, my instant thought was the medicine that we take, the royal we, the country takes for various different medical conditions, and then we go to the bathroom and then we pass out. So I'm thinking medicines in our urine that goes into the water processing plant. So I'm thinking that's the medicine that you're referring to, but you're actually saying specifically fluoride is a medicine, which is complete revelation to me. I had no idea. I thought it was engineering waste left over from World War II. That's what I was told to believe.
That's sort of an environmental argument. In the British Standard, which controls the so-called quantity of the fluoridating acid, hidden at the back in the annex, so people don't normally see it because these are quite expensive to buy. I'll just read it to you. It's under the heading function. Hexafluorosilicic acid is used for the fluoridation of drinking water to increase the resistance of consumers to dental decay. So therefore it has to be a medicine, because it's specifically to increase the resistance of consumers. It's not water treatment. And because it's not water treatment, it can only be medicine. There's no other reason to begin with water.
Right, how interesting, how interesting. So it's not a very good line here, Joy, that your volume, not your volume, your clarity is not coming over terribly well. So if you could be closer to the mic, that possibly might help. We'll carry on and see where we get to. So how did you get interested in this topic? I mean, it's not the average, knitting, crocheting, sewing your children's clothes or whatever. So I mean, it's quite an interesting topic all round. How did you get involved with it, Joy?
It's incredibly involved. I was scouting around for something to do after I got my degree in 2002. This one basically hit me between the eyes. I went to a meeting with Friends of the Earth, and a Dr. Dan Phillips was there, and she was talking about her journey with hypothyroidism. And she finally discovered, after a lot of investigation, and her colleagues couldn't help her, that she had hypothyroidism. So when she was told that the water was fluoridated in the country, she stopped drinking and became better.
Wow.
Then she had her whole house filtration system installed. So she got better, and then she replaced the spent filters with ones which were not fit for purpose, and her hypothyroidism returned. Then when she discovered what had happened, she got some proper filters, and then she gradually got better again. And this is how we managed to work out what is causing ill health in certain cases. So she was talking to Friends of the Earth groups around the country about her problems. And after about, I thought I couldn't believe it that this was happening. I never knew about it. I vaguely remember they put it in the drinking water in 1979 in Coventry. So between 1979 and 2003, I was fluoridated. But I didn't know anything about it. Nobody explained why. Nobody asked our permission. I took a year to do some research, and then I realized, yeah, this lady was right. This was a really bad drinking water, and it certainly caused her hypothyroidism. How many other poor women were getting that disease? We now know from a Kent research in 2014, Kent University, that it's almost double the amount of hypothyroidism in fluoridated West Midlands compared to non-fluoridated Greater Manchester. And in England, it's 30% more hypothyroidism in fluoridated compared to non-fluoridated. That's a very statistically significant statistic. But unfortunately, the Department of Health has decided not to do any further research to find out if that's true. So they only have a correlation study as opposed to causation studies.
Goodness, that's incredible. We know for quite some time about the postcode thing with medications and so on. What you can and cannot obtain within different post areas and within NHS regions. But that's really significant. And even if they were minded to do further research, surely there's enough research already from what you've just quoted that shows that there is significant link between hypothyroidism and the fluoridation of the water. And hypothyroidism is so common now. I mean, it's the drug that people take for it typically is levothyroxine, which is, I know so many people who are taking that drug, and it's very easy to fix yourself naturally. So again, it's another case of following the money all the time. So what I'm seeing now from what you were saying is fluoridation across the whole country, more hypothyroidism, more drugs available to be sold, so more customers for Big Pharma.
Correct. I find it really bad news that poor women in the main are being made to suffer in their 50s and 60s because of this government policy to add fluoride to the drinking water. But I realise also that very many people in England, Wales, are devoid in iodine. So they're going to come basically bouncing along the bottom, as it were. So fluoride is just going to tip them over into ill health. It's a shame about the iodine, it really is. But we can't sort of advocate that that's added to drinking water. Of course not, because that could tip people over into hyperthyroidism. Let me just tell you a really interesting story, dating back to 1932. In those days, they were practicing with fluoride and tadpoles, testing to see if fluoride delayed metamorphosis, and so it proved it did. They had a control group of tadpoles and a study group of tadpoles, and the study group, swimming in water to which fluoride had been added, had delayed metamorphosis. So when this doctor looked at this and he said, oh, that's interesting. Let's see if I can do this. I add fluoride to the environment of my patients who have hypothyroidism and see if we can dampen down their thyroid gland. He had almost 100% success with this treatment, but he added hydrofluoric acid to bath water, tepid bath water, and dunked his patients in the bath 7 times in 1 year, about 20 minutes at a time. And it worked, you know, their metabolism slowed down and they gained weight. But it had to be careful not to drink the water in Vienna because that was slightly high in iodide, and these poor folk were obviously sensitive to iodide. So if you look at the continuum of hyperthyroidism through to normal thyroid function down to low thyroid function, if you keep putting fluoride into a person's environment, they're going to tip over into hypothyroidism. I can't see how it can be any other way. But you know, there are 2 organisations in that study thyroid. There's Thyroid UK and the British Thyroid Association. The latter toes the government line, and the former is very much open to suggesting that fluoride is causing a certain amount of hypothyroidism. And this is a problem because the government's listening to the British Thyroid Association and not to the Thyroid UK Association. So it's a very strange situation.
For the benefit of the listeners, Joy, can you explain the difference between hyper and hypothyroidism, please?
Yes, certainly. Hyper is when your thyroid gland is overactive. It's being poisoned by iodine, and therefore it's too much, and therefore it's actually running so fast that the body can't keep up with it. So people who get hypothyroidism are really gaunt looking, and they're just wearing themselves out. But if you've got hypothyroidism, you're sluggish. You get how can I say, weak, emotional, you put on weight, you have no energy whatsoever. Opposite ends of the continuum.
Interesting. And fluoride affects these conditions, you know, too much or too little or whatever. Life's about balance, isn't it, at the end of the day? And when we know what we need to put in balance for our own body, and of course our own bodies are peculiar to ourselves. And unfortunately, we live in a society now where people just want quick fixes. A lot of clients who come to me in their 50s, 60s, 70s, they want a quick fix. And I say to them, you know, your body has been abused, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, for decades, and it takes a while to unwind. And few people realise the connection between stress and thyroid dysfunction. And the higher the stress levels, and of course, I don't know anybody who doesn't have stress of one kind or another, negative stress these days. So the higher the stress, the worse the imbalance of the thyroid condition. So there's lots of different ways that we can help ourselves with the food, with the iodine content in the food and so on. I'm actually allergic to iodine. I was born with a kidney condition that didn't get detected until my early 20s. And I used to have a what do they call it, IVP, intravenous hyelogram, every few months, and they had to the iodine is the thing that they would pump into me to see my kidneys, and I had a terrible reaction, and that was so I learned in my early 20s. So again, we need to know our own body, what works and what doesn't work. And I will never give anybody supplement recommendations now without testing. And there's so many different testing, schemes around. I've created one for myself, for my clients. But so we've got hypo, we've got iodine, we've got this medicine that's going into the water. What can people do to protect themselves?
They can filter their water supply. They can use reverse osmosis, which is installed under the kitchen sink. And you have to change the filters and membrane every now and then. That's a very effective way of doing it. And you get water which has got very, very little dissolved solids in it. That probably nil to begin with. And then if you haven't got the wherewithal, or you can't install something because you're renting your house or flat, a distiller which converts 4 litres of tap water into 4 litres of distilled water after 4 hours. That's quite expensive in electricity. We're doing the maths at the moment to try and work out how much it's going to cost. But of course, if the whole country becomes fluoridated gradually, and people buy these distillers, I'm just wondering what's the drain on the national grid will be. Like these kettles going full blast for 4 hours.
Yes.
It's an intriguing thought. What else can you do? You have to look, you have to read the labels, and it's really time consuming. You have to look at the back and see where the produce was made. But even that doesn't work all the time. For example, there's a PepsiCo has Pepsi Max made under license in Rugby by Britvic. And Pepsi Max, I think, is the devil's own work because it's got aspartame in it. And also it's made up with Rugby tap water, which is fluoridated at 1 gram fluoride per litre. So a can will be about 0.4, perhaps, something like that. So that and the aspartame, well, why would you want that? And of course, it's such bad news having these sweeteners anyway. Another one I found a few years ago was Sainsbury's West Country original cider in cans. And when I did an analysis of that, I found that it was 0.5 milligrams fluoride per litre, because it was concentrated from the West Country but sent to somewhere else, like Essex or something like that, where it was made up of tap water, which got 0.5 milligrams of fluoride in it. You really have to be careful, but not, you know, if it's actually an integral part of the water, they're not going to put that on the label. So, and then you have to try and work out how you can avoid anything which has got fluoride, like pharmaceutical drugs. Many of those have got fluoride in, and I believe what happens there is that the fluoride helps to potentiate the active substance and helps the active substance get into cells. So you just have to be aware. And I've done a database of all foods that I can lay my hands on which are liquid. I can't analyze food. I did bottled waters, wine, that was fun, beers, and tea. Tea has got a lot of fluoride in it. And this is where we're really concerned about the unborn child and the reduced intelligence. Excuse me.
So the intelligence factor, I mean, there's lots of different things that are affecting intelligence for all of us, not just the young children, but as you mentioned, the unborn, because whatever's going on in the mother's life whilst baby is forming, that's, you know, it's really crucial and key, isn't it, to how the baby pops out and is then nurtured and so on. So talk to us about the intelligence. What specifically do you want to talk to listeners about for that?
Right, so we have very robust research studies from Canada, which were funded by the Canadian government, surprisingly, because Canada government is in favour of fluoridation. It's very odd. But they've shown that at the level 0.7 milligrams fluoride per litre, that's 0.3 milligrams less than we have in this country, the intelligence of the infant, young child, is reduced by 5 to 6 IQ points. That's quite significant. Let's look at the unborn child. If mother drinks tea and fluoridated water, then the baby is going to get it through the umbilical cord, and that's going to bathe tissues. It's going to go to the bones. It's going to go to the brain. The developing brain is probably going to affect the endocrine system. And that's when the reduction in intelligence begins. When the baby's born, and if the baby is given formula made up with fluoridated tap water, but already the child is overdosing, because a baby should not get more than 0.05 milligrams per kilo. But you can imagine if a baby drinks half a litre, they're going to get 0.5 milligrams fluoride per day. And then the rest, of course, as the more they consume, the more they're going to get. So I can't understand why the government can't see that babies are overdosing on fluoride. And that also has a knock-on effect of reducing the intelligence. And when you look at the intelligence curve, the graph, it's a bell-shaped curve, will happen in a population basis, population-wide basis, is that the curve will shift to the left, and that will mean there'll be less geniuses, but more educationally subnormal children. And less geniuses means that our national capital will reduce, because there'll be less really very, very intelligent people inventing wonderful things. But on the other end, there'll be more money spent on special needs, and that's quite an expensive thing altogether. So it's a lose-lose situation as far as the nation's concerned.
It's criminal. It's absolutely criminal, and it's a missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle that's been a quandary to me for quite some time. My mother, bless her socks, before she died, was continually saying, what has happened to common sense? Nobody has any common sense anymore. And this is the answer, because we're bombarded with toxicity from every which way, from the skies, from our environment, from furniture off-gassing, stuff that comes off of our fabrics, our furnitures, our carpets, our curtains and everything. And we're drinking the toxicity as well. So it's every which way. And no doubt calcifying our pineal gland, and making matters worse. And what you're saying about the intelligence curve is fascinating, and we can actually see it. We never used to have, when I was growing up, we didn't have special needs. There was a few people in the school, I'm talking maybe a handful, maybe less than a handful, that were kind of a bit dopey, shall we say, but they weren't educationally subnormal in the way that we see today. And we didn't have special needs, we didn't have autism and all this sort of thing. So it's there in front of our eyes, isn't it?
Yeah. We also know that the Canadian studies have discovered that teenagers who are fluoridated don't sleep so well, so their melatonin levels are really low. And we know that fluoride does affect the pineal gland and prevents the expression of melatonin. We also know that fluoride disrupts the growth of teeth. This is why it seems that children in fluoridated areas have got better teeth than children in non-fluoridated areas, because the teeth have been in the mouth for less time. And by the time they have their first dental examination, age 5, the teeth are younger and have not been exposed to decay-causing elements like bacteria and sugar. But again, this is hotly denied by government forces. Of course it doesn't. It's perfectly safe and effective. There's no proof of its safety. There's no clinical testing of fluoride in relation to our bodies. Although the Health Security Agency, which took up residence in the halls of power on the 1st of October, Public Health England doesn't exist anymore. They will be doing a monitoring report next year, but they're not really looking at our health. They're just looking at cherry-picked illnesses where they can show that fluoride hasn't had an effect on us. The third strange report trying to prove that black is white. It doesn't work for us. It can't be. How can you say that something we know has always been known to be an endocrine disruptor, an enzyme disruptor, throughout the decades? How can you say that that is going to be good for our health over the long term? It can't be.
No, it will be good for their pockets and the shareholders and so on. It's criminal, absolutely criminal. So you've mentioned that people can use a distiller, but then we've got the balance of the electricity costs and drain, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Or you've got the reverse osmosis machinery that can go under the sink, which is great but not practical for everybody. What is there anything else that we could do? And reading labels, of course. Is there anything else?
Right, at the moment we're hoping that people will sign a petition, which is on the government website, and it's up to about 28,000 now. We're hoping for 100,000, so we can, of course, debate in the House of Commons. It's a simple ask, and it's so easy to find. And we can put up the website URL now, can't we?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And there's also a chance still to contact the Public Bill Committee, which is examining the Health and Care Bill, and clauses 128 and 129 involve fluoridation, and it's a standalone clauses, and they have no right to be that bill, but they've been slipped in because the government wants to take over complete control of fluoridation from local authorities, where the responsibility should be. And they're going to try and tie us into one public station, and then say, oh, sorry, we still know best, and we're going to go ahead anyway. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze now.
Oh, just pop you on mute. I'll just mute you for a second. So while Joy is just making herself more comfortable, I'm horrified at this. I've known for years that fluoridation is a challenge, but it's so difficult to know what to do, because you read something that if you could unmute yourself now, Joy, I muted you. I was just saying it's so difficult to know what to do, because people get confused, and in their confusion, in my experience, they end up doing nothing, and they sit there like frightened rabbits, do nothing until the pain of whatever the thing is that they're struggling with is so bad, and then by then it's often too late. So I mean, simple things like toothpaste. For years I've not used, I mean, my toothpaste is coconut oil, bicarbonate of soda with a drop of mint essential oil mixed in a low level jam jar type thing, and off I go. So you know, all natural and so on. So things like buying natural toothpaste if you choose to do that, or making your own. That's my simple version. Do you have any other sort of simple tips and hacks that you could recommend?
Yes, of course. The trouble is, although you and I can afford to buy non-fluoride toothpaste, it's very rare in the supermarkets. In fact, it's non-existent these days. I might buy mine off the internet, fluoride free. People who are on a low income can't afford to do that, so they're going to buy the supermarket own brand, if you like, which is got fluoride in it. I never believe fluoride's okay in the mouth, and it's like topical, but it's still going to be swallowed to a certain extent. Some of it might be through the mouth lining. It's still increasing the toxicity of your body. And you and I both know that the way to get better is to stop putting in the toxins, to try and get the toxins out, and then to top up with vitamins and minerals. But again, people on a low income can't afford to do that, and they're the ones who are going to go to the wall. And the more fluoride that there is in their diet, the more they're going to become ill. This makes a complete nonsense of the whole thing, because the NHS is then going to be completely stressed because we're getting more people, and they won't know why the people are ill. They just come into them and are ill. What's causing this? The NHS doesn't worry about what's causing things. They try and cure with pharmaceutical drugs, and it doesn't work. And of course, the whole nation is going to be more ill and less intelligent as time goes by. It's I can't understand what the government's trying to think of here, but they are being presumably helped by their special advisors, nudged along to do this. And the other thing that really concerns me, nobody has done a risk assessment on what is happening in the rivers. Because when you have fluoride in your drinking water, 50% of it goes into the sewage effluent below a sewage treatment works. Now, if that flows down the river to the sea, okay, it's not going to help the fish too much. We don't know. But if it sinks into the sediment, that's at the bottom of the food chain. Which tiny little organism is it going to kill? Because it's toxic. It's a bacterial site. If there are bacteria in the river, it's going to kill the bacteria. And bacteria, what's going to happen to the, for example, water flies, which are food for the fish? It's going to have a knock-on effect up the water column. So we just don't know what's going to happen, and nor does it really care. We've had a reply to a Freedom of Information the last 2 weeks, which says that Sadi Javid is not going to do any risk assessment whatsoever. Now, of course, he's not Environment Department agency, so he would want to do it, but the Environment Agency should. So this is one of our strategies. It's to talk to the Environment Agency and ask them to do a risk assessment, because if they don't, they'll be culpable.
Absolutely. I remember many years ago, I read a book by, I think her name was Rachel Carson, called A Silent Spring, and it was my first introduction, and she was talking about, I think in 1963, that water used, prior to that, water used to be pretty okay. You could, you know, drink from a stream, but exactly what you just said, all the effluent and other junk that goes in through the soil, and the glycophates that are sprayed on the crops and so on, that all ends up in the water system, and it's just wrong. It's just plain wrong. So tell us about the association that you're a coordinator for, the Fluoride Free Alliance. So how did that get set up, and what's your role in it, and what's the role of the organisation?
Right, throughout the whole of, obviously in the nation now, because England is the only one that fluoridates at the moment, and 10% of us, or say 6 million of us, are fluoridated. And there have been attempts over the decades to add more towns and cities to that, and they haven't succeeded because of the wonderful work done by National Pure Water Association, and latterly by UKFFA, which is UK Freedom from Fluoride Alliance, which we've now transitioned to Fluoride Free Alliance UK. I've been buzzing around this scene since 2004, when I started to be active. Well, become active, in fact. I joined NPWA in about 2006, left in 2011 to make my own website up and my organisation in West Midlands, because we are fluoridated heavily in West Midlands. And then I transitioned to the national scene. I could see that we were going to have to fight this nationally, well, England-wide first, and now we know that Wales is threatened with this healthcare bill, and then they're hoping to go to Northern Ireland. It's a bit of a hot potato for the government, I suspect. Whether they actually managed to convert Scotland to fluoridation, I don't know. At the moment, Scotland is dead against. I just coordinate as many people as I can find who are willing to talk to me, who are absolutely on my side, and we just try and fight fire, really, because we are reactive at the moment, because we have to stop something that's happening. We can't seem to find a way into through people live in England to say we must stop this if they're not threatened. And now the whole of England is threatened. We have now got a really good groundswell of people. We've started a Telegram group, which is a chat forum, and I'm going around doing as much talk as possible and answering questions. My colleagues are working in the background trying to influence MPs, because we have to talk to the MPs because they don't know much at all about this issue. The last time they were active in 2003, when about 100 MPs and peers who signed an early day motion against fluoridation at the time, and one of those MPs was Boris Johnson, and Jeremy Corbyn, and John McDonnell. And two of them are still, as far as I can see, against. We can't say that Boris Johnson's against, although it should be. I can't see how you can change your mind on something like this. So bad, an infinite intervention. You know, surely these politicians know that it's denying us our human rights. It's violating our right to informed consent. And we have to keep pushing it and getting the MPs to understand that if they don't listen, they themselves are going to be fluoridated wherever they are in England. So that is what we're doing.
Right. Is the Fluoride Free Alliance a charity, or is it? How is it set up?
No, we have a constitution and we have a bank account. We don't have members. We just have volunteers to help.
Wonderful. Okay. So what's your overall message then to the listeners? What should they do? Because for some people, they'll be hearing this for the first time, and I suspect they're probably in shock and wondering, you know, can they have the cup of tea now? You know, what can they drink?
Don't have a cup of tea. Robush, South African red bush.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
And obviously all the herb teas you can have. And obviously don't make anything up with tap water, which is fluoridated. That's the best way you can protect your health. And the message is, please please sign that submission, that petition. Get us up to 100,000 votes so we can force a debate. When we know we can force a debate, we really start educating our MPs. We also want this submission to go to the Public Bill Committee to see if we can get those 2 clauses removed before they examine the clauses, which could be any day now. So this is really quite urgent. On the website, which is www.ukfffa.org.uk, that's on the resources page, and it's the 4th item down the resources main page, where it tells exactly what they do, provided they've got a PC and not a Mac. They don't fit the letter, which is a template, translated to Mac. Those are the most important. And talk to people and cascade the petition down to all your contacts, and ask their contacts to contact their contacts, like cascade.
Yeah.
And then, please contact us. I've got a form letter on the website where we can. And I always love to hear from people, and I can put them on our email contact list so that we're kept up to date with what's going on. We do have other plans, but I don't really want to discuss those at the moment.
Okay. So it's ukfffa.org.uk.
Resources page, 4th item down.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. We'll get that shared for you, Joy, on our various social media channels, and see if we can get some more people behind this, because it's such an important topic, and it's such there are so many important topics at the moment that all relate to health, and unfortunately they all come back to money. If you've got money, you can help yourself. If you haven't got money, but we all have education. It doesn't matter what somebody's financial circumstances are. I don't believe that the financial position of somebody should be a barrier to this, because there's lots of natural things that we can do. Like I say, my coconut oil and my carb soda, I haven't costed it, but I suspect it's it's probably cheaper in the long run, because you only need a tiny bit of it, to clean my teeth. So it's a false economy of people go, oh, well, it's laziness a lot of the time. It's a combination, in my view, of lack of education and laziness. But then, as you say, the intelligence level has changed quite dramatically over the years. And, is that anybody's fault? We can't sort of put the blame game, but what we can do is educate and help people to open their eyes and to do what they can to help and share the message.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Joy. We will finish off now, and I will make haste in spreading all this around for you, and my PA will get the video up as soon as possible, and we'll share that out as well. So thank you so much for your time. I hope your cold gets better. I'm sorry you're inconvenienced, but there we go. It's life, isn't it? We have to get on with it.
Yeah, we do. Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Goodbye.